For our next session, we'll hear more about how social listening is a crucial component of audience research and is a tool that big companies like McDonald's and PepsiCo are actively employing. Sharing their insights will be Jola Oliver, Director of Global Social Media Intelligence at McDonald's, in conversation with Stephan Gans, Senior Vice President and Chief Insights and Analytics Officer at PepsiCo, moderated by Raghu Iyengar, Wharton Customer Analytics Faculty Director.
Thank you for that warm introduction, Mark. I'm Jola Oliver, Director of Global Social Listening at McDonald's, and I'm going to take you through our social listening journey over the last 3 years at McDonald's. And I wanted to start by how it looks from the outside in. Like this ballerina's leap, the growth at McDonald's seems effortless. It seems natural. It seems easy. But behind the trajectory is really years of relentless focus and discipline, especially since 2015, where you see that rise in the chart. That's when we started our Velocity Growth Plan. And with this effort, social media has become a massive platform where we can collect data from our current and future customers. Over 50% of people in the world are on social media. It's their expectation that we are engaging with them where they are. And in our ambition to convert indifference to advocates, social is where the cultural conversations unfold. Our social ecosystem is really, really large. We have over 28,000 accounts and over 250 million followers. That's quite a bit. Therefore, we have a massive amount of data across many social channels. And you'll notice in the chart that our markets are decentralized. That means we don't have a traditional hub and spoke model. So we rely on many different tools and partnerships for collecting social data. And there are many ways we engage with customers in social, which amplifies the data sets we collect. We listen to customer requests, such as when we launched this Pickle Big Mac on April Fool's Day in Australia. We partner with celebrity influencers like Travis Scott and J Balvin in our famous menu campaigns. You've probably seen them. And we try to embed ourselves where the cultural moments unfold, such as taking part in the Utah monolith meme with a drive-through adaptation. Given the success we've had on social, we're pushing the boundaries to get to insights. And many social conversations are competing for our attention. Just as like it's hard to watch these dancers all on the stage at once, it's really hard for us to glean insights from 45 million conversations that we have just about McDonald's a month. And then there are the competitor conversations, industry conversations, and cultural conversations. So in order to harness and glean insights, we use social listening analysis to help us analyze this unstructured data. Listening tools scrape the web and social media sources. And we have teams of analysts who define specific topics with a collection of keywords. And then the social tools deliver feedback via dashboards, displays, or email alerts. And we bring those back to our business teams. We've relied on many vendor partners to help us get to the insights and to democratize them to teams. We've built out about 1,000 to 2,000 themes and topics in a very intricate architecture. We've built AI capabilities. Those capabilities include sending out smart alerts, being able to find themes faster, and being able to find insights in a more granular way. Our democratization is something that we've worked hard on so that people don't have to come to the tools, the insights come to them. And we've partnered across many functions of the organization, including our social market teams, outside partnerships with agencies, with customer care, corporate communications, our strategic insights teams, et cetera, et cetera. And we relied very heavily on social listening during our pandemic. In fact, it was the only data source we had for consumer insights, where we could understand that safety was our number one concern for consumers. And we continue to track performance against McDonald's new growth strategy using social listening. And literature suggests that in order to measure advocacy, one of the best ways to do it is through social listening. But I must admit, when you look at the word cloud on the left, the data still can be pretty noisy and not always actionable. So we've built our own text analytics tool. This text analytics tool is able to extract multiple insights from a post by looking at subcomments. And we're able to analyze all feedback for McDonald's, not just feedback for particular topics. This tool also ingests multiple data sources, and I'll tell you a little bit more on the next page about how it works. So there's 4 steps that we built out to get to insights quickly. The first step is called co-referencing. Here, we make sure that any pronoun in a phrase that refers to a menu item is identified. Our second step is to break down the big post or comment into multiple phrases. The third is to do sentiment analysis on each phrase and to assign the phrase to a topic. And the fourth step is to assign a menu item to those different phrases, especially the phrases that have the pronouns in them. With that, we could get to insights quickly, and we know that it'll get better over time. But we also know that AI is in its infancy. And here we have a quote from Craig Brabeck, who's our VP of Data Analytics Hub at McDonald's. And he says that AI is not a silver bullet. It requires a high volume of data quality, solid analytic capabilities, and strong business applications. And our text analytics tool requires a lot of data to train the models and to assign topics. And we're finding that our infrastructure needs to adapt as we add in new data sources and bring about new languages. However, given the benefits, we are continuing to invest. We know that the time savings we get from analyzing different phrases instead of whole posts it takes us to minutes instead of looking at just multiple 20-minute sessions. We could take it down to 1 to 2 minutes. Our sentiment accuracy has increased because we look at the sentiment of an actual phrase, not a post. It's scalable, and we have a huge data ecosystem. However, right now, we're only looking at McDonald's data. Our UI is continuing to be adapted as we add new data sets, which adds costs. And we know that with new data sets, we need continuous model training. We've also worked with data scientists to get to better keywords for other projects that we could embed into our social listening tools. In this case, we worked with our analytics hub to build an AI model to detect food safety issues using Twitter data. The challenge really was that we only had a few incidences of food safety issues to train the models with. Like I just said before, training AI models requires massive data sets, which we didn't have. So we couldn't reliably predict the mentions of food safety issues, but we could use the models on other unstructured data sets. And now we have an ecosystem from which to build other capabilities. Just like these dancers are in perfect sync, so is our ecosystem. Multiple sources of data come into our text analytics input tables and can be connected to other databases or capabilities that we're building across the system. A future of connected databases, teams, and methodologies would avoid the out-of-stock situations below, when we ran out of product during our Travis Scott promotion, during our Spicy Nuggets and Chips Ahoy McFlurry promotion last year, as well as just recently, last month, running out of Pokemon cards for Happy Meals. So we're still learning about AI, and we're integrating more of it into our projects. The things that are really important when adopting your own AI in your own projects is to really ask the right questions up front. What do you want to know about your customer? What do you need to do with the information? That will help inform how you want to design the actual project that you want to build out. And I highly recommend an MVP, a minimum viable product experience, where you can quickly learn, limit your investment, and have a clear timeline, a go, no-go decision. And you need to select a whole team to implement the process. As a business owner, I have a team that needed to partner with IT architects, the data science team, to really build a solution that not only worked in the short term, but would also work for the long term, and be part of an ecosystem for McDonald's. And remember, if things aren't working in your project, you are the business owner. You really own whether this project is going to take off or not, because you own the specifications. And new challenges come up all the time. Data privacy issues meant that we needed to strip all of our data from we needed to strip all the personal information from our data. And our IT processes change all the time at McDonald's, so we needed to make sure that our tool was adapting over time. And the APIs from our vendors also change, so we need to take that into account. And teams change, and they need to be trained over time. So when you look at a project, make sure that you add another couple months to your timelines to account for the fact that we are in a constant change. The positive side also is that we know that our relentless focus on earned social and customer comments is validated by our return on marketing spend models. We know from 3 separate market studies that earned social along with PR definitely adds sales, and it's important that we take that into account in our econometric models that focus on sales. However, not all markets are measuring this kind of earned social in a consistent way, and we've realized that each market has a different strategic intent and priorities. So each ROMS model incorporates what matters for each market, which makes it challenging to use a global standard of measurement. We recently established a community of excellence for social media to collaborate with markets and build more consistency across teams and departments. To get to a beautiful production, you really need to have a team of talented people, employees, partners, agencies to bring initiatives to life. And only with this partnership can we build plans for social data in the future. We are a very, very large organization. It's not really important where we sit, but how we sync. And only together can we accomplish these goals that we have for social over the next few years, which is building up prediction, integrating loyalty data, identifying micro trends to elevate creative ideation, and to democratize interactive visualization to prevent crises. What will future success depend on? Our own CEO, Chris Kempczinski, says, it's a little bit of a Rubik's Cube of what the customer is looking for, what works operationally, and then the business fundamentals. A little bit of art and science to get to great results. So as a recap, social media is a massive platform at McDonald's where we could collect feedback about customers. Social listening tools can help teams uncover insights with real-time agility to inform future action. Text analytics can help you get to insights more quickly, but partnership and communication across teams is critical, and it starts with alignment on your strategic intent. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce Stephan Gans, Senior Vice President and Chief Consumer Insights and Analytics Officer of PepsiCo.
Thanks, Jola. That was a super interesting presentation that you shared. And I'm eager to provide PepsiCo's perspective on how we use social listening combined with AI to inform our consumer-centric decision-making in various areas of our business. So, as Jola mentioned, I work at PepsiCo. I am responsible for global consumer insights. And PepsiCo is, of course, a classic CPG company, right? So we have very big brands that connect with consumers. But other than in the case of McDonald's, not as often directly like McDonald's does, often indirectly through customers and retail partners. Having said that, though, that landscape is, of course, changing at accelerated pace. And that is also why this set of capabilities is becoming even more important every single day. So the capability cluster that I'm talking about, we refer to in PepsiCo as 360 always on. And just to give you a little bit of context where this sits within the total PepsiCo consumer insights ecosystem, right? So consumer insights in PepsiCo is a function of roughly 600 people spread across the globe, spread across all our businesses, with a relatively small global team and people embedded in our businesses everywhere. So my role is to turn this large group of people into a collaborative, connected community that consists of real world-class talent that leverages technology to build world-class capabilities that help us deliver insights with impact for our business. And the focus of my talk right now is on one of those capabilities, 360 always on. Now, it goes without saying that it's important more than it has ever been fair to say that we respond with agility to what is happening in the world around us. We, meaning our brands, our businesses, our innovation processes, and our communication. Right? We got to be more precise. We got to be more human, not slavishly follow what the data says, but really focus on understanding why the data says what it says, and more predictive. So I am responsible for building a consumer insights function that is not a reactive order taker, but a proactive function that basically leads the way for the business. Now, this 360 always on engine of capabilities, as we refer to it, really combines social listening data and deep human insights to provide a holistic answer to various business challenges, right? So this total capability consists of trends and foresights tools that really rely heavily on social listening data. Our brand mindshare global tool, which really informs how consumers perceive our brands, and what we call our humanized set of capabilities that is really about human empathy and mining behavioral insights. So over time, right, over the past 3 to 4 years, we have really developed not only the tools themselves, but really developed the way we can turn these tools and these capabilities into value for our business. And this total tool set consists of a number of capabilities that, as different pieces of a puzzle together, create a lot of value for our businesses and our different business processes. Now, other than the way Jola talked about it, where McDonald's is really, and very understandably so, and excitingly building a lot of this capability in-house, we have chosen for this particular set of capabilities to work with big business partners. Some of them, or the most important ones, are shown on this page. right? So on cultural insights, for example, we have our internal change compass, which is really the, let's say, way PepsiCo and its brands looks at the development of our categories and our consumer going forward. And that point of view on where the world of foods and drinks is going is really strongly informed by the relative cultural context that we can learn from social listening data. And Black Swan is our partner there. There is category trends and prediction, and I'll talk a bit more about that later, which is really where we use social listening data combined with AI to look around the corner. And then we have a whole host of human empathy tools and ways of working that can really provide that empathetic complement to what the data tells us. Right? Now, let me make this concrete and talk about 4 specific use case examples that really help us in working with our businesses across the globe on strategic planning, innovation, brand building, and winning with customers. Okay, so let me dive into the first example. Here's an example of one of our key businesses, Mexico, which is a very large and important business for PepsiCo. The Mexican business leadership is basically came to the consumer insights function and said, hey, given the disruption caused by COVID in our market, which is substantial everywhere, and certainly from a channel perspective, very much so in Mexico as well, where should we be focusing our categories and brands to deliver growth over the next 3+ year horizon? And so the way we mobilize this toolkit and this specific set of capabilities looks roughly simplified like this. We start with really leaning heavily on understanding the cultural insights. How have people's lives in Mexico changed due to COVID-19? And then specifically, what does it mean for their food and drink choices and behaviors, right? Now, looking through the lens of social media listening and really understanding what people are talking about, what benefits are people looking for in the context of all these changed food and drink choices? That leads to social listening in terms of, let's say, the volume and the direction of the conversations out there, combined with artificial intelligence. That leads us to a very clear prediction of what benefit territories are most likely to grow. Right? That combined with some other inputs, specifically from the empathy skills and capabilities, leads to the definition of growth opportunity spaces, which then we use as the jump-off point for our long-term consumer-centric strategy. So this is an example of how a key business, the foods business in Mexico, works with my global function, leveraging these tools to develop a strategy for their business. Here's another example, which is an innovation example, right? I think we all know that if we show consumers concepts for products or services or ideas that are a little beyond what they would typically expect in a certain category or for a certain brand, it's difficult to get really clear consumer feedback on that. So here's the example of what ultimately led to a seaweed flavored snack, which ended up being the biggest performing, the strongest performing SKU for one of our brands in the UK. Now, where this came from is really from very clearly listening to what consumers are talking about in the context of snacking and in the context of that specific geography, in this case the UK, and making a AI-informed prediction as to the volume of what some of these ingredients and benefits will do for the snacking business in that market in the years to come. And long story short, right, that informed a seaweed-flavored set of snacks that turned out to be a great hit. So this is really where, instead of a bunch of marketeers and insights people and designers coming up with a long list out of the blue of potential ingredients and benefits and testing that with consumers, we really have the ability now to take a jump start in our innovation process that really leads to better outcomes much, much faster than we did in the past. Here's another example of innovation where there's a specific benefit, very relevant for a lot of consumers around the world during the pandemic, for sure, immunity, right? So the question is, what does immunity look like as an opportunity for our brands in our categories across the globe? And so this particular business question, we can really unravel that and take a look at this from very different perspectives. From a social listening perspective, which we can work with one of our partners to look at recipes that are talked about online, whether it's by restaurants or consumers, on message boards or wherever online, and we can look at what the immunity benefit looks like, what the key components are in terms of products, ingredients, and benefits that are relevant, and then also we can predict the size of the opportunity, the size of the price. And on top of all of that, we have tools to develop a very clear insight into how consumers behave around immunity when it relates to foods and drinks. So that leads to all of that together are inputs that we can proactively bring to the business, and that can lead to concepts that we can ultimately launch and learn from. Quick example on brand building. Of course, I think we probably all have experiences with marketing teams, brand teams, creating briefings for creative agencies or innovation agencies that make mention of a specific target audience, like the realistic optimist, for example. And although that may be more useful than just a demographic description of who you are trying to reach, it's often vague. And what social listening combined with the AI prediction does for us is that it really gives depth to what this target audience wants, feels, and what they are looking for and why they are looking for that. So a much richer, still succinct, but a much richer opportunity to brief agencies and ultimately get a lot better output. And then finally, an example of how this capability informs our relationships with customers. Here, not a coincidence, of course, given Jola's earlier presentation, an example of how we seek to strengthen our partnership with McDonald's by really identifying and leveraging breakfast trends that have been evolving strongly as a result of the pandemic. Right? So, what are the rising motivations within the breakfast territory, and what ingredients are being used in the healthy breakfast space today versus a year or 2 years ago? All of that we can learn from our social listening tools. We can predict what the relevance of the specific benefits, what the relevance of the specific ingredients are going to be. And based on that, we can propose to our customers, in this case, in this example, McDonald's, a set of breakfast products that are co-created with the customer and great fit with one of our brands, in this case, Quaker. So this is just to bring to life how we use social listening combined with artificial intelligence, embedded in a full set of insights tools to really drive consumer-centric decision making when it comes to innovation, when it comes to strategy making, and brand building. So just to quickly sum up on what is next for this set of capabilities, this is really about fundamentally changing the role of insights in PepsiCo. And this is not the only, but a great example of a capability that enables us to change from a reactive to a proactive business partner for our businesses around the world and our functions like R&D, marketing, etc. And it's as part of that move to proactivity is the fact that these tools enable us to work incredibly fast, right? So we can actually get the tools to work constantly in the background and have insights and suggestions at the ready whenever the business processes like annual planning, innovation, gatekeeping sessions, etc., are ready for it. So we are now turning this full set of capabilities in what we call a futures tracker, right? So looking basically at close-in hot topics that we can serve the business with to really make sure that the brands and innovation teams really understand what the implications are, for example, for the reopening of many markets. What are the implications for food and drink purchasing behavior, right? But also, what's next? What are the reframed values that matter for consumers, given the fact that we're emerging out of the pandemic in many markets, right? What do those roaring 20s that a lot of people talk about and a lot of people expect really look like in our categories, right? And so really developing this capability further and making sure that we continuously identify and communicate consumer-centric growth opportunities to the business. That is what this is all about. And that is why I talk about this set of capabilities really as an engine for consumer-centric commercial decision making. So that's it for me. Thanks for your time. I'm now handing over to Raghu Iyengar, who will lead us through a Q&A session.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This was such a great session. Thank you, Jola. Thank you, Stefan. And let's get right into it. I think all of us are would be excited about the Q&As. So I'll get us started. I think, Jola, I'll start with you. One of the questions that has come up is around experimentation. How do you drive a culture of experimentation at McDonald's? And I'm sure, Stefan, you'll have a point of view as well.
That's a great question. I believe that at McDonald's, the best sort of culture change happens when it comes from the top. So we're very cognizant of the types of leaders that we hire into the company that have a lot of curiosity and encourage experimentation naturally. And they also have investments as part of their budget. A certain percentage of their budget would be committed to these experiments without any sort of risk of failure, because failure is good. We learn from failure. So that's how we do it within our brand.
Stefan, over to you.
Yeah, that's a great point and very applicable, Jola, to what I would answer for PepsiCo as well. But I would add to that and kind of say the opposite thing, which is also important, and that is that in our culture, which is fiercely, let's say, bottom up, fiercely focused on being locally relevant and putting global leverage, second. So the whole setup of our business is such that there is room for experimentation and build local relevance in whatever the market or category that somebody operates in as much as possible.
Wonderful. So one of the questions that is around text analytic vendors and what you're doing at McDonald's, I want to broaden it up a little bit, Jola. We can answer the text analytics. Maybe if Stefan can also answer other things as well.
Absolutely.
Which is, why did you decide to build it internally? And we can start with text analytics, but very broadly, Jola, what is your thought about internal versus external?
So really broadly, go external. If you're a smaller company, go external first. We actually started with external and we looked at probably 7 different tools and they just didn't do what we wanted it to do quickly enough. We were going for speed. We want to get to answer a business question within 10 minutes or less. So that was kind of what we challenged our vendors with. And even we did find one vendor that we really loved, but then it wasn't scalable cost-wise, so it just didn't meet our budget. So, we had to think about privacy laws, and we'd have to set up separate servers for different markets with these laws. And every time we added new data sources, it just got a little bit more expensive. And for us, it was about building a capability we thought would be the costs kind of were upfront and then they would decrease over time. And so we really had that in mind, that we wanted to decrease our cost over time as we got into a maintenance mode.
Wonderful. Stefan, on your end?
Yeah, that's great. And all those considerations make perfect sense from my perspective as well. I would add one, and that is that for some areas, my team and I don't look at it, let's say, this binary of internal or external. For some core global capabilities that we really want to leverage across markets, we've basically set up a JV with a technology partner, right? So we have a number of technology partners, and the examples that I've featured in my talk just now refer to some of them. Black Swan is one, for example. We jointly developed a product, and that works. That to me can be representing the best of both worlds.
Wonderful, thank you, Stefan. Here's another question. I'll start with you. It's a question around decentralized models of companies, and how would you drive efficiency around MarTech and scalability of it?
Yeah, so that's the $1,000,000 question in terms of if I were to tell you what I spend my time on, it's this, right? And I mentioned earlier in response to the first question, building on Jola, I talked about the power of that decentralized model in being locally relevant, and I really believe that. If you run a global function like I do, it's really challenging to drive global leverage of scale. But so I think, like with all change programs, because that is what it is at the end of the day, if you want the global, let's say, consumer insights community to start working in ways that are similar, if not the same, then it's carrot and stick. So it's developing a tool, finding a tech partner, and then developing a tool that is simply superior to anything out there. And then, the stick part comes in with selling the benefits of that tool to the most senior leadership, who then just goes around asking, hey, why are you not using the global tool? Great, or great that you are. So it's this is seriously 85% of my time managing this tension.
Yola, did you want to add something to that question?
Just adding to the carrot and stick approach, we actually did that with our social listening vendor that we use. We actually decided that the global team would hold the budget so that all the markets can actually use the tool without paying extra for it. And that's how we got all those markets to get on board.
Yeah, that's great.
Wonderful. Great to see some consensus across two different organizations. Wonderful to hear. Here's another one, and I want to broaden it up a little bit. It talks about differentiating the 360 always on engine from traditional research, which is focus groups and face-to-face. I would love to hear, again, both of you obviously are in cutting edge companies collecting a lot of interesting data. How do you see what we're doing today perhaps different from a business point of view, from a decision-making point of view, to things that were happening earlier, like focus groups, face-to-face interviews? How is the new marketing kind of research, so to speak, from social, from other ways, different from the traditional ones? Maybe, Yola, I'll start with you, then come to Stefan.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're trying to do, so we've approached social listening and, our CSAT surveys and, some of our traditional separately. Traditionally, we'd be one insights team. However, we'd have our own, so-called pillars, and we're now walking away from that approach and taking a business question and coming at it from many different angles. So we have more of a 360 view of the customer each time we go to our senior leadership, instead of saying, social talked about this and we got this from our focus groups and we, et cetera, et cetera. We have one story that basically says, hey, convenience has been redefined with safety in mind, and here's all the different levers that we pull to get to this insight.
Yeah, I think again, Jola, I completely agree with what you just said. I think the way, and hopefully that came across in what I just shared, the way our always-on toolkit is set up is to really bring to our businesses a healthy mix of, let's say, qualitative and quantitative tools to use, like kind of slightly outdated labels now. And
Yeah.
I think there's always a danger of being, as I call it, mindlessly data-led and or
So
hopelessly qualitatively led, right? And I think in the end, you need to find the right intersection of those two approaches and tools for every specific business challenge. So that is really that with. Very simply, the increased speed at which we can now turn around and serve the business with foresight. Not only just in response to a question, but also just saying, look, are you thinking of this? Because our consumers are, right?
Yeah.
So, you gotta, so that's my dream role of the insights function. It's proactive, not reactive.
Wonderful. I'm looking at the
that
time. I think
I
we're
want
coming
to
into the
just
1 minute mark. Yola, please go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to underscore that being predictive and being able to look at a trend and say this is going to be big, that's huge in insights. Our leadership wants us to see what's coming, not how we're reacting to what's here.
Yeah. Well
Great.
said.
I think we are coming to the end, but I want to hear, one piece of advice maybe. I'm taking a question here which says, how do you get your business and functional partners to think about social listening? But I want to be a little bit broader. Maybe one line from Yola, from you and Stefan. What do you think about just internally? How do you think about data? One line from you would be great.
I think of ecosystem when I think of data. All the data in one place to get a 360 view of the customer. So you have to build it first, but once you build it, you have the insights you need to make decisions quickly.
Yeah.
Over to you, Stefan.
A short one from you, and then we'll wrap it up.
Adding to that is like use cases. So I have incessantly bombarded the key business leaders in PepsiCo with use cases on, look, this is what this capability tells us, and this is what actually happened. If only you would have used the tool 6 months ago, you would have been in a better place right now. That works pretty well, I can tell you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Yola and Stefan, for the wonderful talks and also for this Q&A. And for the audience, please stay here because there's lots more interesting content coming around. So thank you so very much.